Hi, John chapter 8 verse 12 says, Again, Jesus spoke to them saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So I think in John he uses 7 ego aimis, and that's one of them, which is the great I am, the Yahweh. I am who I am from the Old Testament. But what's interesting is he's probably talking about the Feast of Tabernacle, Jesus, which was really important because a lot of things happened and they remembered to a lot of interesting things. First of all, this Feast of Tabernacle was dedicated to the Temple of Solomon. When Israel returned from captivity, Ezra was giving them the message from the Lord. And this was the time when Israel sort of repented from their sins. So what happened was for 490 years they didn't keep the seventh day, the Sabbath year. Sabbath year was the year when they were supposed to forgive people, when they were supposed to forget people owing them money, and they were supposed to forgive people, they were supposed to help people, and it never happened for 490 years. So God led them to become captives in Babylon for 70 years. For every single Sabbath year they didn't keep, so God made them keep all the Sabbath years that they missed in one go. So, and when Israel returned, they asked for forgiveness from the Lord. They repented from their sins. But it's also about the provision of the Lord, that they remembering how He provided for them during the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. And during this celebration, there were 4 giant candles that they lit, and the light was so strong that everybody could see from Jerusalem. And the last day, the lights were put out. But what Jesus says here is that because these lights had a ritual significance, and what Jesus was saying that you're not going to need these ritual lights anymore, because my light will be seen from everywhere from the world. And the original Greek suggests that those who follow Christ will become His disciples. But the other thing is, I probably mentioned this, but I was reading this article, reading something about existential philosophy, and they were saying that every object has 2 characteristics, a primary and a secondary. Primary characteristic is the actual characteristic, and the secondary is what you think the characteristic is. And the way it was explained is if you're in darkness and you see a color, you might not actually see the true color of the object. You can actually see its proper color when it's brought into the light. And it made me wonder that it is the same with us Christians, because while we are in the darkness, we cannot see God, who He truly is. We do not see Jesus, who He truly is. And we do not understand reality the way reality is, because we are looking at it from a sinner's perspective. We're looking at it from a perspective of what we think reality is. And it always made me wonder that people reject Christianity, but do they actually investigate reality? Do you think reality the way you think reality is? It's an interesting question to ponder on. Anyway, verse 13 says, So the Pharisees said to Him, You are bearing witness about yourself. Your testimony is not true. Jesus answered, Even if I do bear witness about myself, my testimony is true. For I know where I came from and where I am going. But you do not know where I come from or where I am going. You judge according to the flesh. I judge no one. Yet even if I do judge, my judgment is true. For it is not I alone who judge, but I and the Father who sent me. In your law it is written that the testimony of 2 people is true. It's interesting that Jesus distinguishes between your law. makes a distinction there. And the book I read this bit in, the author reckons that it was because they were twisting the law to fit their own purpose, desire, want. And it's interesting. It made me wonder that when Jesus said, "You do not know where you're going," or "You do not know, even if I do bear witness about myself, my testimony is, for I know where I came from. You do not know where I come from or where I'm going." And I think it's interesting when he says, "I know where I come from," because I think it seems to suggest that you do not know where you come from, in a sense. And I had this argument at work with a couple of individuals that they're using double standard when it comes to proving the Bible, when it comes to deciding whether it could possibly be true or not. Because if you think about it, there are a lot of things you cannot prove in life, but you can make reasonable conclusions. You can make a reasonable judgment about it. I mean, can you really prove that you're going to wake up tomorrow, yet you're setting your alarm clock? Can you really prove that the sun's going to rise tomorrow? Not really, but you live your life as it will. Can you? And there are things in philosophers, they say that, look, you can't even prove that the reality wasn't created 5 minutes ago with, memory in your mind. Could you really tell the difference? Or if you lived in the Matrix, could you tell that you're not living in the Matrix? These are the things you can't prove, but you live your life as if this would be the case. That, whatever you think about reality is sort of the reality. And but Jesus says, I actually know where I'm come from, so I don't need to make judgments. I don't need to assess. Even if you're relying on, for example, your parents, you're relying on your birth certificate to know where you're from, And I'm not saying it's fake or it's not true, but could it be the case that if it wasn't, that you were born the day they say you were born, or your parents are who they say they are? There are a lot of things you can't prove, but you take it as granted. You take it for granted. It's just an interesting thought process that Jesus says that I am different than you because I know exactly where I come from and I know where I'm going, but you don't know either of these things. And yeah, like I said, the people didn't understand anything about him, even when they say he's bearing witness about yourself. And if you recall, a couple of chapters back, we were talking about Jesus saying that no, because there was John the Baptist, the law, the prophet, the testimony of my miracles, everything's testifying about me. Yet you're still saying that I'm the only witness about what I'm claiming. I think it's sad, to be fair, that people are trying to say whatever they want. They try to twist reality in order not to have to accept Christ. Amen.